Good afternoon, students. As you have read that today we are going to discuss about this particular chapter through the eyes of the travelers. So, most of you must have gone through this particular chapter, and maybe some of you might find it a little difficult. But I would like to remind you that this particular chapter is extremely important when we are talking about related to short question and answers which will be coming up. So in this particular chapter, we are studying about three main travelers. We have Al-Biruni, Ibn Battuta, Francois Bernier. Now all the three travelers, they are coming from Uzbekistan, Morocco and France, but in different centuries, and thus we get a better look, a good look about the Indian history, especially when we are talking about the medieval history, through the eyes of these three travelers, Al-Biruni, Ibn Battuta and Francois Bernier. Let's start with the chapter right now. Through the eyes of the travelers, perceptions of the society from 10th to 17th century. Women and men have traveled in search of work to escape from natural disaster as traders, merchants, soldiers, priests, pilgrims, or driven by the sense of adventure. So you can find that a lot of people, they are traveling from one place to another, and they may be working from, maybe they might travel from one place to another in search of food, maybe in search of job, maybe in search of adventure. Those who visit or come to stay in a new land invariably encounter a world that is different in terms of landscape or physical environment as well as customs, languages, beliefs and practices of the people. So definitely when you travel from one place to another, you come across people who have different customs, who have different languages, who have different beliefs and practices, which is going on in that particular country. So it is very alien to you, the one who is traveling, one who is a foreigner right there. Many of them, when you talk about many of them, it means many of the people who are traveling from one place to another, or people who have settled in some other place, or who have been migrated from one place to another. They try to adapt to these differences. Others, somewhat exceptional, note them carefully in accounts. So there are people who are exceptional, who try to note these accounts in their notebooks. Okay? Generally recording what they find unusual or remarkable. Unfortunately, we have particularly no accounts of travel left by women, though we know that they had traveled. So there is a very unique thing which you can see. It's unfortunate also, you can say that we do not have any accounts which have been stated or given to us by the travelers, because either they have been lost or maybe we are not able to account for that. The accounts that survive are often varied in terms of their subject matters. Some deals with affairs of the court, while others are mainly focused on religious issues or architectural features and monuments. So the accounts which are right here, they are basically dealing with the court, religious issues, architectural features and monuments. For example, so we have an example right here. We have an example of Vijayanagara Empire. In the 15th century, find Abdul Razak Samarkandi, a diplomat who came visiting from Herat. So we have a name called Abdul Razak Samarkandi, who described Vijayanagara Empire in detail, who came from Herat. So first of all, we might come across a question which might ask you, what position did Abdul Razak Samarkandi hold when he came to India? So he was in a position of a diplomat. Next, we going forward. In a few cases, travelers did not go to distant lands. For example, the Mughal Empire administrators sometimes traveled within the empire and recorded their observations. So we have Mughal Empire administrators who are traveling from within the city, and that is why they're recording the observations of the people within the city, what the people are trying to do. Some of them were interested in looking at popular customs and the folklore and traditions of their own land. Now, the people who travel now, the Mughal administrators who travel from one place to another, maybe within their empire, trying to note down the various customs, the folklore, and some of the traditions which they felt that this was something which had come from their own country. In this chapter, we shall see how our knowledge of the past can be enriched through a consideration of descriptions of social life, provided by travelers who visited by the subcontinent. So we are going to study about the description of the travelers who have traveled right here in India, and we'll see what they have written in their books about the Indian subcontinent. So we are focusing upon Al-Biruni. He came from Uzbekistan in the 11th century. Ibn Battuta, Morocco, 14th century. And we have Francis Bernier, France. He came from France in the 17th century. Okay. So this is the first page what we are discussing about. This is the introduction which I have done. So you need to remember these two travelers, from where they came and also from which century they came. In which century they came. This should be remembered. This is extremely important. Moving on to the next page, it says, as these authors came from vastly different social and cultural environments, they were often more attentive to everyday activities and practices which were taken for granted by indigenous writers. Now these travelers, they are basically coming from other countries. So when they are coming from other countries, they are actually taking in details every minute detail of what the people are doing in everyday life, which you find the writers in the same state, they do not write, because they think that this is a usual thing. This is usual, this is very usual, which is going on every day. So it is a very common thing. We do not have to write. But for the travelers who are coming right here, who are coming and visiting India, for them, they are very unusual thing. So when these are unusual things, they are writing it down in their books, their travelogues. Is it clear? It is this difference in perspective that makes the accounts of travelers interesting. So just because these travelers, they have written each and every minute detail of the society, that is why you find these details are very important in the perspective when you are studying history of the Indian society. It is very important. Okay, now we are moving to the next topic. Al-Biruni and the Kitabul Hind. Coming to the next topic, Al-Biruni and the Kitabul Hind. Now in this book you find that Al-Biruni has written about the Hindustan, India, what he has perceived according to the perspective of the various books he had read in India, about from the Brahmanas, from the Brahmins, especially when we talk about the Vedas. So we move on and we'll study what actually it has written. Al-Biruni and the Kitabul Hind, from Khwarizm to the Punjab. Al-Biruni was born in 973 in Khwarizm in present-day Uzbekistan. Khwarizm was an important center of learning. So we need to remember that. It's very important. At the time when Al-Biruni was born, Khwarizm was a very important center of learning, and Al-Biruni received the best education available at the time. He was well versed in several languages. Like Syriac, Arabic, Persian, Hebrew and Sanskrit. So we have around 5 languages in which he was very well versed. So we have Syriac, Arabic, Persian, Hebrew and Sanskrit. So we might find a question. Which might say, state the languages known to Al-Biruni. So you have to learn this question. It's very important. You know what are the languages. Although he did not know Greek, he was familiar with the works of Plato and other Greek philosophers, having read them in Arabic translations. In 1017, when Sultan Muhammad invaded Khwarizm, now that was something you can say, it was very lucky for him, because when Sultan Muhammad invaded Khwarizm, he took him along with him, this particular person, as a slave. He took several scholars and poets back to his capital, Ghazni. Al-Biruni was one of them. So Al-Biruni also went along with him. He arrived in Ghazni as a hostage, but gradually developed a liking for the city, where he spent the rest of his life until his death at the age of 70. It was in Ghazni that Al-Biruni developed an interest in India. This was not unusual. Why? Because Sanskrit's works on astronomy, mathematics, and medicine had been translated into Arabic from the 8th century onwards. So we can find that there was a lot of translation that has taken place from Sanskrit to Arabic, and the topics which are covered was astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. When the Punjab became a part of Ghaznavid Empire, contacts with the local population helped create an environment of mutual trust and understanding. So when Muhammad of Ghazni, conquered Punjab, and Punjab became part of India, of Muhammad Ghazni, you find Al-Biruni took a keen interest in studying and in knowing the people of India, what they were all about, and what were the religious practices, and what the cultures and traditions were. So he came in contact with the Brahmins right there. Al-Biruni spent years in the company of Brahmana priests and scholars learning Sanskrit and studying religious and philosophical texts. So you can clearly see the keen interest of this particular person in learning Sanskrit. So once he learned Sanskrit, he was able to read through and go through several books, especially the Vedas, which had immense knowledge and gave him an idea about the caste system and the class system which was going on, which established in India at that particular period of time. While his itinerary is not clear. Now itinerary, when you talk about itinerary, there's a word called itinerary. Itinerary. This is known as a travel book. It's a travel book in which the travelers are writing. So he is writing in his book. Okay? It's not clear. It is likely that he traveled widely in Punjab and parts of northern India. So when we go through this particular book, we come to know that we assume that he has traveled through Punjab and most part of India. Travel literature was already an accepted part of Arabic literature by the time he wrote. So while he is traveling, he is also writing this particular book. So he is writing his own ideas, what the India is all about, especially when he's coming in contact with Brahmanas. So now in Arab world, the people who were traveling and they were writing books, they became very important. It became very important because the Arabs came to know about India through these books. This literature dealt with lands as far apart as the Sahara Desert and in the west to the river Volga in the north. So while few people in India would have read Al-Biruni before 1500, many other outside India may have done so. So clearly says that in India, people were not very much keen interested in studying the history of the traveler, what the travelers are writing. But they were basically very much interested in studying but the people outside India, they were very much interested in studying what Al-Biruni has written in his traveler's books or in his travelogues, or you can say in his itinerary. Okay. Coming to the next topic, we have Kitabul Hind. Okay. Now coming to the next topic, which is Kitabul Hind. So we'll not talk about the book which was written by Al-Biruni, Kitabul Hind. Al-Biruni Kitabul Hind, written in Arabic, is simple and lucid. So it is very easy to understand what actually is written, because it is written in a very simple language, so that the people who are reading it are able to understand while he was traveling, what he saw and what he has noted it down. So it is a voluminous text divided into 80 chapters on subjects such as religion and philosophy, festival, astronomy, alchemy, manners and customs, social life, weights and measures, iconography, laws and metrology. So these are the huge subjects which he is covering. So we can clearly see he was very much interested in knowing what the people of the other states and the other countries or the other regions were doing and what their interests were, and so he's covering all the subjects right here. Generally, though not always, Al-Biruni adopted a distinctive structure in each chapter, beginning with a question, following this up with a descriptive based on Sanskrit traditions, and concluding with a comparison with other cultures. So he's having a different type of structure. We can say he's starting the chapter with a question, followed by the Sanskrit tradition, and then he's ending it with a comparison with the other cultures. For this, I have written a question. The question is, what different type of writing structure had been used by Al-Biruni in writing his book? What different type or distinctive type of writing structure had been used by Al-Biruni in writing his book? Moving forward now, some present-day scholars have argued that this almost geometric structure, remarkable for its precision and predictability, owed much to his mathematical orientation. He was very much interested in mathematical part, so maybe he has done that thing in a mathematical way, that he has divided the things and all the things are in a very precise form. Before that, I move to the next paragraph. I would like to give you some questions right here. The first is, how significant was Al-Biruni's expertise in several languages? How significant was Al-Biruni's expertise in several languages? Next question is, name the desert mentioned in Al-Biruni's work. Name the desert mentioned in Al-Biruni's work. Next question, name the book written by Al-Biruni. Name the book written by Al-Biruni. State the languages in which it is written or translated. State the languages in which it is translated. Another question, state the pattern of writing adopted by Al-Biruni in his works. State the pattern of writing adopted by Al-Biruni in his works. Coming to the next paragraph. Al-Biruni, who wrote in Arabic, probably intended his work for peoples living along the frontiers of the subcontinent. Now we are talking about peoples. We have a word called peoples. This particular word, most of the students, they do not know that this particular word, when you add S to this word, people, it becomes peoples. And thus, this means community. Community or communities. This means communities. So here it says, Al-Biruni, who wrote in Arabic, probably intended his work for communities living along the frontier of the subcontinent. People who are living at the borders of the subcontinent. He was familiar with the translation and adaptation of Sanskrit, Pali and Prakrit text into Arabic. These ranged from fables to work on astronomy and medicines. So he was very much familiar with Sanskrit, Pali and Prakrit and the various stories. He was also reading various, astronomical books and also medicine. However, he was also critical about the ways in which these texts were written and clearly wanted to improve them. So this is the best way. When you come to know that you have, when you have read something or a particular book you have read and you find something which is wrong, then you try to improve these things, then clearly shows the level of intellectuality, the level at which you are, you can say the way, or you can say how studious you are, how much you are interested in that particular subject. That even you are finding even if you are finding some wrongs right there, you are ready to do some correction work. You are not taking that thing as a granted. Moving on, we have a question right here. Who referred to the people living east of India, of Indus, as Hindu? There is a question. Who referred to the people living east of the Indus as Hindu? We have a small column right there on the right hand side on page 117 at the top, which says Hindu. The term Hindu was derived from an old Persian word used around 6th to 5th centuries BC to refer to the region east of the river Indus. The Arabs continued the Persian usage and called this region Al-Hind and its people Hindi. So you find this were the Arabs basically who used this particular word. Later the Turks referred to the people east of Indus as Hindu. So we have the Turks which are referring the word Hindu, this particular word in the east of the Indus as Hindu, and their land was known as Hindustan. So the Turks were the one who had referred this particular, who has referred the people living east of the Indus as Hindu. Moving on, he says, and their language was Hindavi. So the Turk said that the people who were Hindus, they had a language known as Hindavi. None of these expressions indicated the religious identity of the people. It was much later that the term developed religious connotations. So we do not find any word known as Hindu. It was basically that this particular term Hindu came from the term which was basically used by the Turks, who said that the people who are living beyond Indus are known as Hindus. Okay?